Hello and welcome to the Lead Generation Strategies podcast. I'm your host, Joey Myers, and this podcast is brought to you by Lead Generation SEO Services with a S at the end of that.com and in Fuego Media. So today I am privileged to bring on, I want to welcome Mr. Seth Silver. So welcome first, Seth.
Hello. Thanks for having me, Joey.
And not to be confused with Terry Silver from the Cobra Kai.
Right.
Way different dude. I don't know if you're into the Cobra Kai series, Seth.
No, my daughter loves that. And there's apparently a Dr. Silver too.
Dr. Silver in a show or whatever.
No, I guess just like, on LinkedIn, there's another guy and he's a doctor, and it's a funny joke we have.
You haven't been able to copyright your name yet.
No, not yet.
So Seth he's a founder of Silver Creative Studio in Los Angeles, California. And I'm going to let him go into more about his company, what he does and what he's up to. I know he just started a project this month. So I'll let him get into that. His website is sethsilver.io. And again, at the end, we'll kind of come back to that and let him talk about where we can find him on LinkedIn and all that kind of stuff. So again, thanks for joining us, Seth.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So let's start off with, tell us what your company does at a high level for your clients.
Yeah, absolutely. So we provide photography and video and design services for food and beverage brands. Predominantly our content lives on digital platforms, social media, e-commerce, but one of the value adds with our service is that all of our content that we create for the client, they completely own it. So many of the times they're able to leverage that content for a variety of different marketing purposes. While it is social or digital first content, they get a lot of value by using that content on a variety of different platforms.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. And Seth, again, this isn't a lot of times I'll have real estate people on. We talk marketing, lead generation, that kind of thing. Seth's actually a marketing guy like myself. What struck me about him is I met him, was about 2 years ago, maybe. We were just talking about that before we got on the call.
Yeah, a few years ago. I've just been running my own consultancy business.
Since then,
we talked then, yeah.
And then you mentioned it was the social media leads. What was that site again?
So I had a company called Social Control.
Social Control, that's right.
Which was a social media, like digital creative agency. Mm-hmm. Ran that for 10 years with a different partner.
And that was the one that I think I had contacted you on originally. We were looking at some merger acquisition stuff. And so we were talking about that. You were kind of on your way more into where you're at now, more of the multimedia, the photography, the video, that kind of thing. And you being in LA, it's a perfect spot for that. It's really cool to even talk to real estate agents down there in LA versus say in Kansas, a real estate agent in Kansas. And nothing against Kansas or the Midwest, but right. the video production and audio imagery, I mean, it's amazing what you guys are doing in LA and so far forward. I mean, I think I talked to somebody in Kansas, asked them what they do video production wise. Real estate, again, is a big imagery based, video based thing that if you take the drone coverage of a home, just the images of the home, video tours of the home, which I think a lot of people found pretty important in 2020.
Yeah, when we absolutely.
Isolated.
Everything went virtual.
Right. So my question to you is, so why the food and beverage industry? So what got you into kind of niching into that area?
Well, I think it was like a natural progression. At this studio that I had previously, Social Control, we had some large food and beverage clients. Mm-hmm. And so that was always a talent that we had. And my business partner, she's actually a food stylist. So she's the kind of the brains behind the creative execution, handles all the recipe creation. So it's just been, we found that to be a really exciting vertical for us. We also have found that it's a vertical that is consistent in the sense of like, and I think we saw this throughout the pandemic, particularly with agencies and, businesses providing marketing services where certain verticals just simply stopped marketing, right? And the great thing about food and beverage is everybody always has to eat. So no matter what, economic downturn, we might be going through, it's a really strong business and people love to eat. And so what we like to say is that we create, content, we create delicious content for delicious brands. And it's just a fun thing to do. It's like an art form for us. We are able to put kind of love and pride into our work, and because we're actually making it a lot, most of the time we're actually, the ones that are cooking the meals and photographing them and helping kind of position that brand. So that's the kind of the main reason for us. It's just something that we're incredibly passionate about. And there's a lot of great clients to work with out there, and there's a lot of untapped too. You'd be surprised. There are some clients that we're in talks with right now. Can't get into too much particulars, but they have a variety of different, very large, holding company for food and beverage, and they have a variety of brands that still are not, doing much within the space because they're just big, kind of legacy food brands that obviously have a lot of retail distribution, so they do well without it, but they're realizing more and more that they need great content, especially if you look at like what Snoop Dogg you've seen the news, right? So, and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he takes over a huge part of the market. I wouldn't be surprised if he starts competing with a lot of the big boys, and people start realizing that influence is a big deal today.
So is he now? I know he's been in crypto quite a bit. I know he's starting to get his hands in a bunch of different things. So in the food and beverage, he's done something where
so just over the past, I believe it's like over the past week, he launched so Mama Snoop. Okay, right. So he's got grits, oatmeal, and I think pancake mix or syrup, I believe. It's all breakfast stuff. And then he's got like Snoop Pops or some type of cereal. I don't know recall the name of it, but I know it's Snoop Pops or something of that nature. And and they've been getting a lot of, PR about it. So it's really interesting. And what's great about that though is that my understanding, because I did some research, and that a lot of the proceeds are actually going to, I think, help like homeless people and underprivileged communities. So I think it's great that he's doing that.
Yeah, they have some goodwill and things like that. Yeah, it's interesting. You follow some of these stars, and some of them over others. But we have some news crypto sites, and so he's been doing some NFTs and some avatars, and Tony Hawk, with the skateboarding, like they do the same thing. And to see him there, and to see him now, you're mentioning here the breakfast foods, Mama Snoop, and he's just got a name that, especially our age generation, we know Snoop Dogg, and he's a lot of voices. I don't know how old you say your daughter was.
My daughter's 11.
She's 11. And do you have one kid?
Just one. Yeah, okay. Just one.
So 11. So you're watching all the different movies, like the DC League of Pets. And what was the other one? Recently, it was a dog. It was Doggone Trouble. So we had seen it a while back. My son, who's 9, he's younger in this photo. My daughter's 6.
Okay.
But we were watching the Doggone Trouble, and I don't know if I caught this in the beginning or if it was a Doberman, right? Snoop Dogg. It was a Doberman. I don't know if I saw him in the beginning, but at the end, it was probably the last 20 minutes of the video. This Doberman's on there talking. Whoa, that sounds like Snoop Dogg. Is that Snoop Dogg in this Doggone Trouble movie? He's like voicing. Yeah. He's doing a lot of voiceovers in a lot of these cartoons movies.
Yeah, I think he does have a cartoon now though as well. Yeah. So, you've seen it with Shaq and a lot of these, athletes,
Ice Cube,
music, exactly. And they've just started to venture out. Even I think like 50 Cent. He's got I saw
production
some,
company.
he's got a huge production company. Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's great. And I
Smart.
think it's great when they can do it for good as well, where they're giving
Right.
back to the community. And so
Yeah, it's not
it's
all about making
fantastic.
money. Yeah.
Exactly.
So let's go back in time before we get to the lead gen side, because we can't do a lead generation strategies podcast
Of
without lead
course.
generation strategies talking about it. So let's go back in time in your history. So what were some of the things in school? Did you study photography, video production, marketing stuff? Was that what you studied in school, or and if not, what brought you to that?
Yeah. So I did go to school for graphic design.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I really like cut my teeth as a, designer, graphic designer, design director. But throughout my childhood, I was extremely involved in art,
Mm-hmm.
and growing up, obviously in Southern California, art and the street culture of like skateboarding and surfing and all of that, kind of came together. And growing up in Los Angeles, of course, so there's a lot of exposure to Hollywood. Um, but I was fortunate that very early on, like age 4, my aunt, actually my godmother, she was an art teacher, and she taught me about art history and taught me how to paint. And I was 4 years old, and she was taking me to the Mocha, and taking me to the LACMA, and you're right. So I grew up with that, and it's always been ingrained in me. So I've always been a creative person. And then and then I decided to go to school, right? Like actually after high school, I started, decided to get a degree in graphic design. And from there, it's been 20 years of just working with, great brands. I've worked with brands across like many different marketing verticals,
Mm-hmm.
but I just found that for me personally, the consumer brands are definitely the sweet spot, food and beverage, and then, CPG.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, did you ever work for somebody's company, or have you always been an entrepreneur?
So I did. I spent only about 5 years working on behalf of others, and um, I was able to accelerate pretty quickly because when I graduated school for graphic design, I worked at a company called Novacom, which was like an Emmy award-winning motion graphics company
Mm.
based out of Hollywood. And so that really propelled things forward for me very quickly. I was taken under the wing of a creative director who happened to be a 14-time, Emmy award-winning
Mm.
creative director, who was at the end of his career, who was very, very much a mentor to me. And so he taught me the basics of, building and scaling a creative studio. How do you expand and contract creative teams? How do you
Mhm.
inspire those teams? Right. And then I had obviously the design, capability, but he also taught me a lot of design fundamentals,
Mhm.
right? That I wasn't able to get in design school per se, right? Like real practical design fundamentals. And at that time I was working in the entertainment industry. So I've actually, my career has spanned a lot of different marketing verticals through the studios that I've run, but so that was really like the first 5 years of my career was working on behalf of others in entertainment,
Mhm.
and not so much consumer
And
brands, a little bit.
right. So talk about that transition. So what it could be scary, right? You're leaving an area which is at 5 years. I mean, pretty good knowing you had the mentor and the whole thing. Coming out of that, going into business for yourself, what was your strategy, or was it more of a hunt and peck experimental type thing?
Well, I mean, for me, I've always been extremely entrepreneurial. I happen to come from a family where everybody runs their own businesses, so it's not foreign to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that yes, it was a little, obviously it's scary, but my first studio that I ran was a company called Evolve Interactive, and I've had a partner. So I worked at a studio in Hollywood. After Novacom, I went to another studio that was more focused on like digital creative and interactive,
Mm-hmm.
website design and development. And then from there, I started a company called Evolve Interactive, and I had a partner. So that, alleviated a little bit of it, right? In the
Mm-hmm.
sense where we kind of relied on each other and we both had our own connections. So, it was that transition of like, going out there and where do you focus your energy? I think for me, it's always like when you want to do something, you just do it.
Mm-hmm.
So you could either send your resume out to 100 people, or you could start a company and send out leads. Drive organic outreach, and if somebody, so it all depends on what you're looking to do.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my rationale at the time, was like, and I had some of the contacts already. And that first studio did start off with some entertainment clients like Sony, for example. And because we had a previous relationship, and my partner, he worked for Fox Broadcasting.
Mm-hmm.
So he had some relationships as well. And we were kind of a hybrid, we were doing consumer work, and then we were also doing entertainment. So we're more generalists in that sense.
Mm-hmm. Now it's interesting. You've mentioned pretty much with every company that you started, you've had a partner. Some people that's scary. Some companies that's scary to bring somebody on. So what are the top two things that you look for in a partner in a business?
Well, I think if you could find a partner that you guys have complementary skill sets, that's pretty critical. And for where you're at within your career, because I think that's changed for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like over the years, like if we talk about my first business, my second business, now this is my third business, right? Within the span of my 20-year career. So I think at every time you're looking for a little bit, me personally was looking for something different,
Mm-hmm.
right? But always I'm looking for somebody who has a talent that I don't have, right? With social control, my social media, agency that I ran, my partner was more or less a financial partner.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He was more of an HR partner, more of he was an early investor in the business. So he was handling a lot of the business aspects, human resources, the financing, finances, insurance, all of that stuff, while I was kind of building the relationships with, my customers, and then also leading the creative team.
Mm.
Right. So but this time around, I think it's more or less like my business partner. She brings a talent that I don't particularly. She has her own talent, so I don't have the same talents that she does, but our talents are completely complementary.
Mm-hmm.
So it works out really well in that sense, especially with the market that we want to service. Right.
Right. Very cool. Well, I like that.
Yeah.
That's good advice for those out there looking to bring somebody on. And yeah, you obviously don't want to hire yourself because then the other things that you might not like to do are going to be tough. So let's go into the lead generation side of things. So
Yeah, of course.
how has your lead generation strategies, how have they changed over these three companies? And you don't have to like go into there's 5 things here, another 5. Maybe it's the top couple things, or maybe the top strategies, how it's evolved to now, like how it started and then the kind of shifted second gear, then third gear.
Yeah, I would say that it's becoming more highly qualified, right? I think in my early days of my career with my first company, it was all about this like shotgun approach. Mm-hmm. And it was like, let's just contact as many people as we possibly can. And there's pros and cons with all of these different strategies, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what I've always been grounded in is outreach. I mean, you have to be comfortable going out there, hitting the pavement, selling your business. And I do that through a variety of different resources. Over the years, that's changed. Now, third business in, I'm heavily involved in LinkedIn and Sales Navigator, right? Still using email, but more as like a secondary or like, touch point. Whereas like actually when I started my first studio Evolve, it was incredibly effective. Like in the early days of social control, I could, we get a list, an email list, and if it was the right, we would always be highly targeted with who we wanted to reach out to, right? Because we're always going after like enterprise level brands, but the open rates were, incredibly high. We secured some very large clients simply by doing cold email, right? And that grew the business, for a long time. And then we would, build relationships and so forth. Over the years, I've seen that change quite a bit. I don't think, from my experience, the cold email is a lot more challenging now. One reason is for especially because these larger companies, their IT infrastructures are much more sophisticated than they used to be. So you can't just email somebody necessarily and expect that they're going to even get the email, right? And especially if you have any type of link, hyperlink, or anything of that nature in your email.
I was just going to say that.
Forget about it. It's probably not. Yeah. So you're better off trying to slowly build the relationship, reach out to them. That's just my point of view. Like reach out to them, let them know that, maybe you've done some research, you think you could add some value. This is what we do. Don't hard sell with like a link or anything like that, and just simply ask, would you be open to receiving some information? Right. So that's the approach that we would take now, because if you send somebody a link, they might not even, get the email. So, or we'll connect with them on LinkedIn, and then we'll use that as like a, oh, I sent you a LinkedIn connection, or I found you on LinkedIn. We provide, this service, right? And it's always highly targeted. Like, again, we're not reaching, like for us with Silver, we're trying to connect with food and beverage brands. So we're not reaching out to anybody who's not, in that space, right? Because we have a product, right? Content, food and beverage content that we're highly qualified to produce and develop. And so we know that if we can get our work in front of the client, there is a good chance, if they have an opportunity, to work with us, because we feel confident in the work that we're doing. So we're not just reaching out to, anybody necessarily.
Now, are you guys, because you're using Sales Navigator and LinkedIn, for those that don't, maybe aren't familiar with that, that's a kind of the premium service that you pay for on LinkedIn, where you get access to much more private messaging and information. You have a filtering program where you can, like what Seth's talking about, you can go in and look, you can filter by food and beverage companies, CEOs, marketing directors. It's really, really good for those that don't know about it to go check it out. Are you guys searching regionally or certain areas of, you don't have to give away your secret sauce or anything like that, but are there certain areas, you have to be specific, but maybe areas of the United States?
Yeah, there's definitely criteria, right? Like so it's all like a test and learn. When we first started using Sales Navigator, you want to make sure you check all the right boxes in regards to the filters. For us, most of the time, we're looking to develop relationships with large, like, enterprise clients, typically that are public, because have found that those are the types of companies that just have the marketing funds to support, what we do. Because what we do, we have to, there's a whole team of creatives working on the projects, right? So from concepting the content to right, to delivering it. So there's a team, and so it just requires a more premium. There's a premium cost associated with it.
Mhm.
So therefore, we got to find the right types of clients who are able to support that and also understand the value of that.
Mhm. Yeah, very, very cool. So, so you're just kind of putting it out there, seeing what kind of response you get, and if you start getting a decent response, and you kind of keep hitting that area, basically in a region side of things.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we'll break it down. Like sometimes we might start with the LA area and then go more national.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Now, I know before our call, we were talking a little bit about, you had some things to say about SEO and things like that. I think SEO and maybe social media, I think you were maybe comparing, contrasting. Can you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I've been fortunate to be able to see like all sides of the equation in regards to different kind of lead generation strategies. And with Social Control, my social media marketing company that I had, we actually at one point were ranking number one for a social media agency in Los Angeles. And there's there's pros and cons to that for our business, right? So this is not a one-stop, you know, for every business, right? Per se. But this is just kind of where we are coming from with it. So because as I mentioned, like I've always catered towards larger enterprise level clientele, just because we're providing a premium creative service that requires you know, those types of funds associated with it. The challenge that we were having is, while it was nice and it was kind of a notch on our belt to say we're number one, ranked agency, social media agency in Los Angeles, it also, I would say, for us, my experience was that 90%, unfortunately, of those leads that were coming in were not the right clients for us because they were small. We don't service the small business sector,
Mm-hmm.
right? Not that we wouldn't, but we just don't, again, because of cost. So, and they have limited budgets and so forth. So
What were you finding their typical costs were that they were looking to spend, like $100, $500 a month or something?
yeah, I mean, people are coming in with like, $1,000 or, things like that. And it's just,
It's a lot of
there
work
was a
too. The
few of
social media
those.
space is a lot of work.
Yeah, so we had limits. I mean, what was interesting about it though was that it was something we couldn't really deny either, right? So in the sense that we were getting so many inquiries uh at these really micro budget uh at these really micro budgets that we had to look at it and think of ways to offer some type of solution that was more cost effective. Over time we did, but we still had like a $5,000 a month, minimum,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, we were able to develop a service that we felt like we could give good value at a $5,000 a month, content,
Mm-hmm.
social media package. But anything under than that, we weren't, and that still was hard for us, frankly. Like, because we're used to providing a much more like service where we're acting as consultants and we're coming in and we're putting together, these are the concepts, this is the content plan, right? And having that FaceTime with the client to really understand their business goals and objectives and ensuring that our content is aligned with it, rather than just going out there and just, shooting content at the hip per se.
Right.
So I do think that, yeah, again, there's positives and negatives with it depending on your type of business.
Mm-hmm.
I think now I would probably just find a way to qualify a little bit more. Like at one point we had like a lead form and we would just put like, the minimum budget. And if
Mm-hmm.
they didn't have that, then they couldn't select anything.
Mm-hmm. What also might have been interesting too is some sort of a SaaS solution to that. I think maybe we talked about that when we first got together, where you can automate. So the multimedia content stuff we do is based off an AI and software automation. And then we have a little bit of a human, hands-on human approach. We have writers that write some of this stuff. But it's AI and software automation. So if a company wanted to come in and say, hey, we want a multimedia marketing event to go out every day, like we could do that, or once a week or once a month or whatever it is. We could do that because of the SaaS component, right? So in the sense of the social media marketing, I think we talked about, I don't remember quite all the details when we were talking about back then, what you guys were doing, but being able to package a lot of the services that you normally do, but using AI and software automation to do that, but that would require possibly acquiring a company that does that, or partnering or something like that, but yeah, interesting stuff. I know that tug that you guys had on not wanting to not service people based on budgets, but that's business. You have to figure out, you don't want to be working 24/7.
Right.
You want to have some downtime, family time, stuff like that. And if you are chasing anybody and everybody, and I think last time we talked, it was that top 10% that you really focused on. Those are the enterprise people or close to enterprise that you can get to,
Yeah. Yeah. I was always like incredibly, it's just ecstatic when we would get an enterprise level lead coming in and we would secure that business. And it was just fantastic because I was like, wow, they just found us on Google, and it's a $20,000 a month retainer or something like that for us. And I mean, it was great. And we had many of those as well, but funneling through those lower level leads was definitely a challenge for us. I know that there's other businesses that have solved that, though, frankly. So I was just in the mind space at the time. I wasn't particularly interested in solving that or servicing those types of clients.
Right.
That said, there are very large social media, digital marketing businesses that have done that and offer, very inexpensive packages and are, and do a tremendous amount of revenue, right? But they built those businesses from the ground up. And I think that's the thing. I think we were because we were servicing more of those higher enterprise level clients, we built our business on this one-to-one connection, a lot of communication, account management, strategy. And when you've got those lower end budgets, you have to remove process, like you were saying, or let technology take over. So then you got to find technology to replace your process. So like, I think there's something called like Panda Docs or something. Like you could move your whole contract to like a SaaS tool where you just basically, okay, you signed up for this package, they click a button, it sends them a contract, they sign it, you know what I mean, right? Like you can absolutely do that now, but we weren't at the time set up to do that. It was all like, okay, you want to onboard as a new client, here's our contract. It was very, right? Like, so it was more of a premium service where it costs us more to engage that way.
And it's amazing too how it works out that way, where you have the lower end services costs that you use the AIs and software automation to make it cheaper, and those people are fine paying that and they know what they're getting. And then it's funny at the top where you're talking about the enterprise people, they want more of the normal relational type of service, right? They're not going to be the types that will buy or purchase an automation or AI, possibly. Maybe some of them will, but they want that. They want to know that Seth's there to take care of them, to do it for them, right? Done for you, basically. Amazing how it works out that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And like a big company, like a publicly traded company, even like a head of marketing is not going to like have a credit card to be able to put in and sign up for a service, right? So that's what's the difference is like, you could go on, find maybe a company, like a social media company that can offer these lower level packages. And then it's like they click a button, you put in your credit card. That's more servicing small businesses. But like if you're, got a publicly traded company, no one's holding a credit card. I mean, except the CEO or, and so you got to go through a lot of hoops. Even when we had to onboard, for example, new analytics tools and things like that. I mean, we couldn't just end those off operate that way where they would require like a credit card from the client. I mean, you could go through procurement and it's a whole process.
Financial department. Yep. The
Right.
CPAs, all the different CPAs and the heads of accounting. And
Yeah.
but it's fine though, because like you said, it could be
Yeah.
a $20,000 retainer or $100,000 retainer or something like that.
Right.
So it's well worth the effort to put into that. Well,
Yeah,
hey, Seth, I
absolutely.
want to be respectful of your time. Thank you for sharing all that you shared. Please share with
Absolutely.
people where they can find you if they want more information. Say, you know, eventually we'll probably run into some food beverage people to get on here, and they may see it because we put it on Google the way what we do. They may find you anyway. So where can they find you? Get a little bit more information.
Yeah, I'm the best place to find us is just sethsilver.com. That's the best resource. Yeah.
And that shifts over to SethSilver.io or from SethSilver.io
The
to
IO. Yeah, we're in transition right now with the new studio, but we will keep that website up. It will be sethsilver.com and sethsilver.io. It's all the same. But we're going to be transitioning that website over to all of our kind of food and beverage work over the next month or two. Right now it's a little bit more general. But
and then over at LinkedIn, Seth Silver, not to be confused
Seth Silver
with
on LinkedIn.
Dr. Silver. We talked about Dr. Silver or Terry Silver from Cobra Kai. So remember, Seth Silver, not Terry Silver. Totally different gentleman when talking about that. Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much, Seth, for joining us today, taking the time and sharing your advice and all that stuff from anything from lead generation to what you guys are doing with photography and multimedia and video and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, thanks, Joey. I appreciate it.
You got it. All right, hang on.